the state trying to set kind of this balance between these two interests of the farm worker health and the economic viability for this essential industry that keeps everyone fed.
So Enrique, you do cover Yakima, you're based there, but you often are found wandering all throughout central Washington, and that is a very large geographic area. You found yourself up north recently from there in Okanogan County, and specifically the town of Brewster. What took you there?
Simply put, cases have been surging there very recently. Since the start, Okanogan County has had close to 800 cases, but about 300 of those cases came in just the last 2 weeks alone. So that's a huge increase, and it doesn't seem to be slowing down. So I went to go check it out. And basically what I kept hearing over and over again is that a chief reason is community spread. Some people are just not taking the pandemic seriously. And there's also concern that the virus is spreading in the agricultural industry there. Already 2 workers from Gedber's farms have died, and they came from abroad on H-2A visas. Actually, that might be another source of coronavirus for this community, is those workers who come from abroad, because as part of the H-2A visa process, there's certain checks, but nobody is testing for coronavirus within these workers, not the American government or the Mexican government, which is where most of these workers come from. And, in both of these places, cases are surging. And so it just makes sense that potentially these workers are also bringing in the coronavirus as they come in to, for the cherry harvest and for the apple harvest.
Enrique, is it fair to say that health officials there in Okanogan County and at the state level are worried about that region becoming another blow up or hotspot like we've seen previously in Yakima and the Tri-Cities region, especially in agricultural operations? Is that really a big concern?
Yeah, definitely. And not just with those state and local officials, but also with community organizations or statewide organizations that advocate for people like farm workers. The worker deaths have already drawn scrutiny from state investigators about working conditions at Gedber's farms. And this week, the county health department has asked county leaders to issue some kind of proclamation to encourage people to take this seriously, to wear masks, and to social distance. County leaders seem really hesitant to issue any kind of mandate because that could be interpreted as an infringement of basic civil rights by some residents.
On the similar topic of farm workers and safety measures, this also gets into some elections news. You were recently covering a little bit of, I guess, rally is the right term, or protest or demonstration in several cities there in central Washington throughout the 13th legislative district. This is for state house race. And that had to do with what one of the candidates, the Democratic candidate, was calling for in terms of a boycott on fruit. Tell us a little bit about some of the dynamics there and just what was going on in that race that prompted this call for a boycott and some of the dynamics of that district.
Right. So the candidate calling for a fruit boycott is Eduardo Castañeda Diaz. He's running against the Republican incumbent, Representative Tom Dent, and he basically is using his campaign as a platform for a lot of these issues that we've heard since the start of the pandemic, especially here in the Yakima Valley, where we had a lot of farm workers' strikes. When Castañeda Diaz saw that, he really decided to kind of change his platform and take that as an issue to push what he calls the farmer ruling class in that district, to put pressure on farmers to give more protections to workers and to provide them with hazard pay. And that's just one of the interesting ways in which the COVID-19 pandemic has really kind of changed how we're running the election this year. And it's something we talk about a lot when it comes to the national election, to the presidential election, and conventions, but it just down to tiny places like Mattawa, Washington, where one of these rallies took place. This is really changing how people are thinking about who they want to endorse as their candidate and to see them as their representative.
Well, of course, farm worker protections and labor issues in the agricultural sector are not new, particularly to this region. It's long been an issue and something talked about in elections, but you might say it's just been exacerbated by the pandemic. But in recent months, you've been following this issue and looking at worker strikes in Yakima and elsewhere. And you've talked to a lot of farm workers, warehouse workers, and farmers and fruit growers themselves. I wondered just if you could generalize some of the things that you've been hearing from them about what they might be asking for in terms of protections or other things from state and even federal regulators.
So farm workers generally want just better protections in the workplace. Of course, they're essential workers. And so farm workers recognizing that want masks to be more widely available, and they want farmers to take better precautions. And they also want better economic protections as well, because a lot of these farm workers are undocumented. So that means that they didn't get any money from the CARES Act, and they're still facing increased expenses when it comes to children being at home, the rising prices of produce and meat. Farmers, on the other hand, well, they're also facing a lot of challenges. For example, in the apple industry, the price of apples has fallen for years, and this is really kind of putting additional pressure on farmers who, at the end of the day, have to make a profit and have to pay all these workers. And so they're asking the federal government to give more aid to help them get through the season. So there's a lot of debate, and there still seems to be a lot of, the state trying to set kind of this balance between these two interests of the farm worker health and the economic viability for this essential industry that keeps everyone fed.
Well, indeed, they do keep us fed, and you keep us fed with good information and news on these topics. Thanks for joining us today, Enrique.
Thanks for having me.
Find more on these and other topics and coronavirus resources at our website, nwpb.org. Thank you for joining us here in the unique Northwest.